Hey guys, Mr. Wilson here. Today we're going to talk about the quadratic formula some more. At the end of this video, you should be able to solve the quadratic using the quadratic formula and give your answer in simplest radical form. Now the only difference between this lesson and the last lesson is how we're going to write our answers. So today we're going to give the exact solutions. Okay, the exact solutions, which means that we're going to be writing it in simplest radical form. Alright. Alright, so let's go through it. Nothing else will change. So to solve a quadratic, remember we want to identify A, B, and C because we will use the quadratic formula, which has us put those in place. So A is 1, B will be -1, C will be -11. Remember that the quadratic formula is opposite B plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I want to plug in the values where they belong, so I have 1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared minus 4 times 1 times -11 all over 2 times 1. Alright, and so remember I can just do most of this on my calculator. Have to stay organized though, so 1 plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to figure this out, I'll do 1 because that's -1 squared, and then I'll do 4 times 1 times -11, gives me -44, so minus -44, which means I'm doing plus 44 over 2. Alright, so 1 plus 44 gives me 45. So I have 1 plus or minus the square root of 45 over 2. Now you see that square root of 45 is not a perfect square, so it's not going to be a really pretty number for us. But what we're going to do is just going to simplify it. Okay, that breaks down to 9 and 5. 5 is prime, 3 and 3. Okay, so now what we have is this as 3 radical 5. Radical 45 is the same as 3 radical 5. And so my answer in simplest radical form is 1 plus or minus the square, or 3 radical 5 over 2. Okay, and so now I get my exact answers. There's 2 solutions still. You see that it doesn't break down to anything else. I will want to check to make sure I can simplify the fraction, and in this case I can't. So that's my answer. Okay. Do the same thing for second problem. So A is 7, B is -10, C is 1. I'll plug in my values where they go. So opposite B plus or minus b squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Alright, and so now I want to try to start simplifying this. So I have 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 4 times 7, which is 28, all over 14. So now I'm going to simplify this. 100 minus 28 gives me 72 over 14. Alright, and now I have to simplify my radical. Okay, and that gives me 6 radical 2. So what I have here is 10 plus or minus 6 radical 2 over 14. Now, what I notice here is that all my numbers outside the radicals are even. And so I know I can simplify this further. And so I am going to simplify. I'm going to take that 2 out. And now I'll be left with 5 plus or minus 3 radical 2 over 7. Okay. Now notice for each problem we have 2 solutions. Okay, so the plus or minus shows us we can do 5 plus 3 radical 2 over 7 or 5 minus 3 radical 2 over 7. Those will give us 2 different numbers. To reduce in these problems, you need to be able to divide a number out of all numbers. Okay? Okay, all the numbers on the outside of the radical. Notice that's why we were able to do it for second problem. When we divided by 2, we did not change this 2 inside the radical because our rule, remember, for radicals is outside by outside, inside by inside. So goes with multiplication and division. All right, let's try this last example on this first page. We have 2x squared plus 6x minus or equals 3. Remember that we will not try to solve these until we have it equal 0. So I'm going to reorganize this problem. Okay, reorganize the problem. So I have 2x squared plus 6x. I need to move this to the other side. So minus 3 equals 0. Now identify A, B, and C. And then I will go into plugging in what we have. So opposite B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Alright, so I have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. 4 times 2 times negative 3, and that gives me negative 24. So negative 6 minus negative 24, that's plus 4 then, all over 4. So 36 plus 24 gives me 60 over 4. All right, and now we can go through and simplify. That's 15 times 4, 2. 15 breaks into 5 and 3, no groups there. Okay, so I have negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 15 over 4. Again, notice I have 6, 4, 2 all on the outside, and so I can simplify that. I'm going to factor out a 2 from all of that. And so I end up with negative 3 plus or minus radical 15, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, it gets out, over 2. And that's my final answer. That's the exact answer. That's what happens when I ask for the exact answer. Okay, we're not rounding it. We're not taking it to the 10th place or anything. Okay. From there, if we wanted to, we could find out if they said, hey, round to the nearest 10th, we could do that. All right.